Um, so I guess since it's just it's basically half people that have been here before and half people that have not. Um, it might be best to just start with like where we're at. Like how far back do I need to go, Al, as far as like
I stated very little.
okay.
Uh, yeah, you can. I'll let you go ahead and take it. And there we go.
Hello, Jessica. We just started like 45 seconds ago, so you didn't miss much. Um, so I guess I'll start with like the organization and how it came to be, just so we kind of understand where we're at. Um, well, I guess actually I'll start a little bit before that. Won't go into a lot of detail, but back in 2012, 2013, 2014, um, I was working on an organization, changed names a few times, but the name that stuck, if there's references on the internet, it's probably going to be the Netizen Empowerment Federation. And that organization was like a loose federation of podcasters and bloggers. Um, and the reason why that it's relevant is, we're trying to take a lot of the lessons learned from trying to get that off the ground, um, into what we're doing now with Friends of CC Music. Um, Ended up pretty much giving up on that as an organization. Um, I ended up joining Block Sonic, which is a net label that's been around since 2007, doing some of the commercial stuff with them. Um, and a little bit after I joined Block Sonic, we started um, the CC Community Music Awards. And so we've kind of got this history of sort of like trying to do things as a community rather than as individuals. Um, a lot of that, a lot of the stuff that did happen used to happen through the Free Music Archive, and um, Free Music Archive was part of WFMU, got sold to Kicksplit, and Um, it's never been the same. Now it's owned by Travis Noise. It's definitely in a better place than it was when it was under Kicksplit. But so many people left that specific community during that time that it hasn't really recovered. And Tribe of Noise is their focus is very much on getting musicians paid, which is a great, thing to be interested in. But it's very different than the old FMA, which was really very about like, bringing everybody in the CC music community um, together. And I think they kind of fell into that role, but that's that's kind of neither here nor there. We're trying to replace that, to some extent. Obviously we're in a different place than, the whole world is in a different place now than they were in 2018. So it's not like we're trying to like 100% just map that onto what we're doing now. But we've got a decade and a half or so of sort of like community stuff that we're trying to coalesce into a cohesive unit. Um, and a couple of years ago, people started to get kind of serious about it, serious enough to like, okay, let's get a website, let's like actually have meetings, let's figure out what we can do instead of just like, posting on, whatever social media, like, oh, it'd be great if somebody did this. Like, let's just do it. Um, and so the last couple of years have been a struggle as far as um, figuring out what we can do with the limited resources that we have. Um, So this summer, one thing that we kind of got talking about was educational materials. And uh, I don't know that I really expected that, you know, we were just kind of like brainstorming, and that was something that just really seemed people seemed to be interested in the possibilities of the things that we could do. And so we did talk through some things last month, and we definitely are moving ahead with a very specific eight eight a series that's like split into 8 different parts that we're going to be doing on um, machine learning. And there's a guy, Josh. He's a musician, but he's also an audio engineer. And he used to work at a back in like 2019. He worked at a company that was doing um, machine learning stuff with music. And he had a lot of thoughts about how it could be used like artistically. And he got kind of fed up with like the way that that whole scene went, and people not respecting artists and things like that. So um we it will be like both like technically about like how the gears actually work, but also some of the so Jessica is an attorney, and we don't have a date yet, but we'll probably she's interested in helping out with some of the legal ramifications of some of this. We don't need to get necessarily into the specifics of. I've got an outline for how I want those to go, and I've got some dates. But we don't necessarily need to get into the specifics of that unless we think it's relevant. Um, you know, Today, one of the things that I was hoping a couple other folks would be here and we could figure out how we want to do this managerially. But um, for now, I mean, I think there's enough interest in the education stuff that we'll just kind of keep on keeping on with that. Um, yeah, and I guess I'm sort of interested in where you think you might fit into what we're trying to do.
Just to back you up a little bit, Doug,
Okay.
um, and just to make sure it's clear to everybody.
Right, right, right.
So CC Music is just Creative Commons music, and then machine learning is just whatever AI development. Which I'm glad you used the term machine learning,
Yeah,
because I don't like the term artificial intelligence at all.
yeah.
It,
I
it,
actually in the blog post I wrote about it, I used advanced idiots, and I think it's actually I think
yes, thank you, Doug.
it's a really interesting. I don't know how much you thought about the term. Maybe you thought this through. Uh,
Hello,
hey, heard
say
somebody.
that again. Sorry.
Oh, um, but I was thinking that like they do advanced things, you
Hmm.
know, and but they don't have intelligence. So like advanced idiots actually like kind of sums up like it's amazing. Like that's great. Like um I don't know if you just came up with it offhand or if you like really thought it through, but I was like, no, actually that kind of does explain where we're at. That's like a really good. I mean, it is slightly negative, but it's like that's that's where we're at. So um yeah, and part of my thing is just sort of like there's just a lot of misunderstanding that about like what what it is that's happening, and I just think that it's not, it's people talking past each other. So um I'd like to like help resolve some of that. I don't know that we'll be successful in any sort of way, but we can try. So
Yeah, yeah.
um but yeah, and you know, as far as the Creative Commons thing, this is something that's been talked about a bit. Um, but there are other licenses out there. We just don't have a really good term for what those. I've been trying to push the term net native music. Yeah, I said that right. Net native music, because net labels, um, like Omar Omar has this, I think. I think he's technically correct that the functional function of a label is to release music, and therefore, if you release music, you are a label. And I think that's technically correct, but also kind of like semantically confusing for folks. Um, so I don't really like that term. But I think that the net native, basic, and I suggested shareable. I'm not really sure why people didn't like shareable. Maybe it's just like too much of just like a word, like it's just too normal. Like it doesn't sort of like, um, set things apart. But I don't know that anyone other than me has used this term net native music, to try to encompass some of the other licenses that aren't actually from the organization called Creative Commons that but are, basically part of that ecosystem.
So,
Um,
but that's my question. Why not just the Creative Commons? Why reinvent something here?
well, I mean,
What's wrong with, in other words, what's wrong with Creative Commons in your opinion?
well, like 99%, well, probably more than that. Like a bunch of folks, like Creative Commons. I think it's mostly the French that don't like Creative Commons. But it's there are a few other licenses that are doing things that require more source than Creative Commons does. So talking about like, the raw files and you know things like, if you had like Ableton Live components or something like that, that you might release those under like something that's more um, technical than Creative Commons. But yeah, I mean, I haven't personally run into a non-Creative Commons license since like probably 2012 or something. This used to be a much bigger deal than it is now because it was. Um, the folks that do the Art Libre license had said for a long time that the CCB YSA license was not compatible, and CC's stance was always that they were. Um, but then they during the CC 4.0, that cycle of license changes, they really worked to like um, address the concerns of the Art Libre folks. So yeah, it's kind of been like largely a non-issue since 2014, at least as far as it pertains to new material. But a lot of stuff, it doesn't get relicensed, so you'll still see like it's CC 2.0, and those artists could just update their license, and that would fix the problem. But you've got a lot of older material that theoretically is not compatible with other pieces of music. In practice, like how big of a deal is that actually? I probably not, but it is something that um, you know people people were concerned about. So um, just trying to basically make sure that those folks that are releasing under the Art Libre license, and like I said, there's a bunch of other minor licenses that people use. I don't know if anybody uses them off of Dogmazique, which is a big French. Well, it's a website. They do more than that. They have some community stuff, but um, you know, they're the only people that use any of those other licenses, as far as I'm aware. But
Doug, you mind putting that site in the chat, the web address?
Yeah,
yeah,
that's what I'm looking for. How do I find that site? It's a French site, you said?
yeah. Here, I can put that in the chat. And I can also just share the
Do
the
not trust
license.
everything
The
the French say, it's. But to Al's point, if your brand is CC Music, don't go confusing brand. You already have the CC brand, so it feels natural that you'd have the CC licenses, honestly. Dogmazic.
um
Plus,
yeah,
nobody
I
gives a
mean,
shit about licenses
I
anyway.
don't know that we've ever played anything that was, not CC on any of the shows.
Dogmas.
Let's see here. License table. So yeah, they got a few here. It's interesting that you know they don't have. Oh, I guess they're just not in order here. I don't know if they have
Oh no, they themselves
this
use
sampling license. Yeah, so none of the 1.0. I don't know how long those were in existence.
I
There
don't
are
know.
some. Oh, there's the sampling. Okay, so I don't know about
For
and
some
there's sampling
reason,
plus.
at least on my end, your screen
Uh,
um, stopped updating. So
uh, oh,
I'm
yeah. Let's.
yeah, you can see there it's a
Yeah.
CCBY
okay. Now I see it. Now I see it.
and CCBY and CND license. So they're, they're already doing that. I don't know.
Yeah, they just have a bunch of. They just are listing all of the open licenses. That's all they're doing. But yeah, they've got this. Apparently EFF has a license. I don't know. But yeah, so like some of the stuff like like from The Wired, the album they put out like in 2005 or whatever. A couple of those things are Sampling Plus, which like Sampling Plus was deprecated a long time ago. So the older stuff is kind of a mess. Again, I don't know how big of a deal that really is, but in any case, I mean it's not super relevant to the education discussion unless that was a thing that we wanted to educate people about.
And so
Right.
is it what kind of education are you talking about? Just music education? What material are you
Well,
focusing on, Doug?
yeah, so I mean that's one of the things that we were, wanting to sort of like figure out today, but um, the one of the things that seemed to really catch people's attention, we were talking about this back in I think it was June, um, was like my idea is basically that like there's all these skills that musicians need, basically to, if, particularly like touring musicians to like navigate, you know, travel and, different countries and things like that. So, um, you know, I'm not, like my Spanish is not good enough to teach anybody very much Spanish. But Omar would be able to do that if he, is like I don't know if he has the time to do it, but like he would be capable of doing it. Um, one thing, and again, I don't really have um, a person in mind for this, but like the Indonesian scene is like really big, and they're kind of disconnected, and some of that is due to time zones, but I think a lot of that is due to language as well. Um, so I would love at some point to be able to bridge that gap. And we did have on back when I was doing the music management podcast, we had on the guy that well, he ran a couple of different net labels in Indonesia, Rizken Records and Stone Age Records. Um, but yeah, aside from that, they're largely sort of disconnected. Um, but yeah, so I mean, I think one of the things that I would like to do is just to sort of like, you know, the scene is kind of dominated by like Europe and North America. And there's a lot of music out there that's not from Europe and North America, but it's very like disconnected. And that's kind of always been the case. I think it was less the case when Mist Records ran Net Label Day, because they're based, I think, in Argentina, but maybe Chile, somewhere in southern South America. And yeah, I don't really know why they got out of the game, but um,
Well, just to pause you, Doug.
Yeah.
I know. Last month, just some of the more simpler basics on on touring that we've been going over. On the fact that uh, a lot of musicians don't, uh, and especially musicians that aren't in major cities, um, they really don't even know how to start going about doing DIY networking um, in order to make contacts to do small tours and things like that. Um, and just some of the things that may come up in regards to, okay, how do you facilitate lodging, um, things to look out for in regards to because as you know, especially in the DIY scene, contracts aren't always in place. So how do you dot your I's and cross your T's to make sure that you're not going to get burned? Um, and but then also, as you were speaking towards earlier, when it starts coming to the technological lens of things and what's going on. I mean, especially, I think it's really important now when we have Spotify, especially in the West, is arguably kind of replaced Clearwater as the kings of radio, if you will. And so that's kind of a big deal when you have the quote unquote band go to number one on Spotify, um, on top of Spotify openly voicing that they are actively developing, um, machine models to crank out music. Um, and so it's like, okay, uh, you know, that's a pretty major change in landscape. Um, and okay, so what is educating on what are these these what is machine intelligence, um, how can it be used practically, um, uh, how exactly does it work, um, how can it be used towards artistic ends, and that could be everything from someone's a guitarist, well, machine intelligence can help them build the equivalent of guitar effects rigs and whatnot, and that's a pretty big price saver for for guitarists, as much as guitarists would spend on pedals and things, while also a means of being able to highly personalize um, the nature of those rigs and how they work. But the education on how to do that and use it practically, um, really just isn't there. Um, and so I think those are everything from what's going on with touring, what's going on with the technology, how to go about and uh, find and find communities, find music even, and source things um, that aren't stemming from the machine intelligence world, because especially if someone's looking for arts with soul, so to speak, um, the simply speaking, for the pop market was always product. It wasn't really about art. It was just about moving product. And one can argue that it's going to be when you got machine models that are just cranking out the wazoo, some with super large data or data sets, so to speak, to build models on. Um, the idea that I kind of personally look at that as like a lost game, but I also think that there's a lot of people that they're not looking for product. They want something with heart, with soul, and so. But how do you find that when the major stations that people are tuned into, like Spotify, pretty much openly confess to, we completely plan on replacing this, and we're just going to give you a bunch of machine cranked out whatnots.
Yeah, so one thing that I think we've largely been talking about musicians, but I think uh, what Al just said, we should probably talk about, the fact that we have lots of different audiences as an organization. So, podcasters is certainly one, musicians, um, but also just like the audience. So some of that, hey, how do I find music with soul would be, you know, I mean, it kind of goes both to the musicians, like where do you go if you want to, stay out of the Spotify nonsense, but also like, where do we send the audience, those sorts of things. So I think one of the things that we've struggled with as an organization, and I think is um, less of a problem with the education stuff, because I think the stuff for musicians um, is just so easy to conceptualize. But we do have, multiple audiences that we could be making content for. So um, I guess while I'm another thing that Al was saying was how you could possibly use some of the new technologies with to make music. And I'm just gonna read this. I think it's like 3 or 4 sentences that Josh sent me back in June when I was first talking to him about maybe putting some of this together. Um, he said, I actually worked in an AI composition startup. I saw it as a way to compose a song, like a three-dimensional sculpture, in that a composer can write a song that's different every time you listen to it, like an evolving entity. Unfortunately, no one agreed or used the technology in that way. They just wanted to use it in unethical ways to steal and flood the streaming market with thousands of pieces of mediocre garbage instead of creating singular works of art with longevity. Um, so, he wanted, this was 6 years ago when he was working there. And he just, he got fed up. But um, yeah, the tools are still there to do that sort of stuff, I think. I mean, arguably they'd be better now than they were in 2019. So, um, I don't know that we might be in a throwing the baby out with the bathwater sort of situation. If people are trying to not, not use the Geminis and the open AIs and such. I still think there's um, some opportunity there. And some people, I mean, people still, use tape cassettes and, like that's fine too. Like you don't have to do use like the latest and greatest technology, but I think some people would be interested in that. So but yeah, I mean, I guess there's a lot of opportunity. Like I said, Josh is his full-time job. Like he owns a studio. Like I've been in his physical studio. There's actually he was just opening one when I was in Paris. I didn't get to go into the new one, but the old studio has like 3 separate recording rooms, and I think the new one is close to the same size. So he's got a nice little setup over there. I think he was saying one of the problems is he doesn't have a wired Ethernet connection, and he's like in the basement of a factory building, and yeah, he's not sure about doing things live, but he could potentially still, excuse me, record some sessions about how, basically training people how to do audio engineering and stuff. So, one of my tasks is just to sort of like try to get that stuff on the roadmap and scheduled and stuff. We've also got an individual that's a cybersecurity professional that I don't know, maybe that's part of the machine learning stuff. Maybe that's a separate sort of thing. Um, but there's some opportunity there as well. And again, you know, trying to avoid like being scammed by folks when you're trying to put together like a low budget tour, that you're not working with like a company that does this stuff as their job, and
Yeah.
you're just doing it yourself. Then I could see folks
Yeah.
getting in bad situations.
Towards that end, um, one of the things I noticed is I won't say the artist name, um, but they're not exactly a small deal in the electronic dance music world, and there's a kind of renowned house music label called Nervous, and this wasn't isolated to Nervous Records, but he was with Nervous. And one of the things I noticed about this artist was you would think that you go to some artist place and they're gonna have their tools of the trade around and whatnot. This guy has next to nothing, and he would have all these vocals on his music, and I was just kind of like, oh, it's really weird. Who are all these vocalists that you're working with? Well, as it would turn out, Nervous, amongst else, just had these batches of vocal samples, and it was kind of just like, here, just kind of slap these onto something. Um, and there was a number of other things that the label was doing, and this is coming from call it a cybersecurity standpoint, where I was quick to notice that I'm like, okay, it's quite clear that what's going on here is that the label has a desire to attach um, a persona, a name, um, to something, but the means by which they were giving the quote unquote artist to work um, was very, 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 very um, curated. You're working within boundaries, and not only were you working within boundaries, but it was just like, okay, they're kind of facilitating a system um, that catered largely um, to similar things to what Spotify was looking to do with these just language, model, well, not language based, but model based uh, uh, creations. Um, some of the and some of this was resulting in things, and you could kind of see obvious money laundering going on in some cases, especially in the block space. Block space being crypto, um, things that were connected to NFTs and whatnot. I know Joel Zimmerman, amongst others, had gotten themselves involved in a lot of this. And you could take a look at these labels that were selling these supposed NFT releases, and some of these things were moving for prices that it's like, dude, nobody in their right mind. When the median American, last time I checked, and I think it's gotten worse now, um, the median American had something like $500 in savings. So they were basically a major accident or hospital stay away from just being totally screwed. And so it's like, okay, if that's what the median American is at, never mind what the median teenager or something like that is at. So it was quite clear that it's like, no kid is paying $50 for this stupid NFT. This is blatant money laundering. You're doing something else, because you would see these releases that were just 50, 60, 70, 100, 200. And so it's like, okay, but what facilitates and kind of clears gives an appearance of this is on the up and up. Well, you get these artists that have names attached to them, be it a dead mouse or whomever, and wow, okay, well now we got this iconic figure, and they're rolling stuff out on this, and so sure, it must be legit, right? Why else would these guys be with this? And if somebody doesn't really have any kind of understanding and this is just basic cybersecurity sides, they're totally blindsided to whoa, something else is going on here. They don't see it. And so those are certain those are ends of where I do think on practical sides for both artists and for the consumers of art, where education comes into play, where how to be able to spot that funny business is going on, and something else is so that the artist can be aware of, like, hey, you're being used for other purposes. As another artist that I won't say the name, I ended up pointing out to them with the label that they were with that was obviously doing really funny money laundering games and things. I was like, hey, have you talked to any of the other artists from your label? Well, no, I haven't. Have you met any of them? Well, no, I haven't even talked to them. Okay, have you talked to any of these label heads in person? No, I haven't. And it was really funny. He was so happy about being with the label, and that there was this label rolling his stuff out, that again, the fact that it's like, dude, you're being used for something, and you're really not the benefactor here. The fact that nobody cares to speak to you in person should bring you pause. The fact that you're not seeing other faces should bring you pause. The fact that okay, there's all these so-called vocalists, but ain't nobody ever met them, should bring you pause. Um, and some of these labels I've come to see, it's like, yeah. They'll crank out, just like with the vocals, they'll crank out these sample sets for the artist. And these are all things where when one is completely and it's not just net security. I'm prone to the saying that you know over 90% of hacking is social engineering.
Yeah, and that's one of the things about, I mean, and not even like even a step above like the social engineering, just like physical security. I mean, like, and it's just like, don't get your gear stolen out of your car, sorts of stuff. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and and, and the whole idea is like, obviously there's a lot of machine learning materials out on the web. There's a lot of cybersecurity stuff out on the web. But the whole idea here is that we're targeting musicians. Like, musicians are not normally the target audience of this kind of stuff. So, you know, it might be good. We haven't done any of the cybersecurity stuff, but some of that stuff it might be good to have a couple of musicians there so they can ask questions, because you know, we haven't done a recording yet. So, I guess we'll see what the feedback is, after we do, some of the first ones, on the machine learning. But, I really want to make sure that we're like, coming in at a level that people understand. Which, for someone who like works in the cybersecurity space, that might be a hard thing. There might be a lot of like, things that they just take for granted. So, yeah, I think, we've done some of this sort of stuff interview style in the past, and I think that can be a valuable way for people to find things that they might not have thought of, and there might be pieces here and there. Um, but I do think that the interview can leave a little bit of you know, like I'm not saying that like classroom designed materials are always the best way to learn, but like things are developed, with like, a starting point and an ending point for a reason. And interviews don't always like sort of go down a logical train. They're just discussions. That's what they're supposed to be. So I think that leaves something out, but again, there might be an opportunity here to sort of pair some of those things. Like we have a series, but then maybe we do an interview with somebody that's interesting in the field or something like to. Um, I've got the 8 segments that I want to do for the advanced idiots, but I'm I'm not gonna, we're not gonna record all of those and then just unleash them on the world. We're gonna you know, record one and then see what the community says about feedback and then keep
Yeah.
on moving on from there. Because, as you can see, like we don't get a lot of people that show up for the meeting. But we do get people that say that they want these sorts of things. Um, so, like it's just it's hard to sort of like give it to the people that, you know, they're
What?
busy and like we're trying to help, but it's hard to know exactly how to help and they don't tell us what kind of things they need
Yeah.
help on. So
Well, I think another important thing is to, and I believe I told you, I know Church of Space, we have an entire operating system, that we've developed.
yeah,
Haven't totally rolled it out hard to the world yet, but I think, and it's all open source. But part of the uh, the key there is to provide a not just something with not just giving lessons, but to provide a framework, you know, so that uh, people can put things into practice.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Because it's one thing to talk about tools and whatnot, but if one is talking about tools without providing a framework, a readily available framework that people can access and jump on, um, and follow along, with lesson plans and things
right,
that and so that was one thing I was really, and the OS just happens to, the basic things for doing uh machine learning things, containers like Docker and stuff like that. Um, this OS is just boom, it's all there. It's you know to the extent that things can be readily set up so that people aren't having to go um, through you know some of the basic things of like, how do I even set up these environments to get started with the tools,
yeah, yeah,
you know um and that was something that was part of a large part of the reason why the OS was being developed, was to try to help provide, like, boom, here's your framework, you're ready to go, you're not having to look all over for where's this thing that I connect with this thing, and set this up, blah blah. It's just like, okay. And that way, when one is providing, okay, here's how you work with Jamulus, if you want to work in live music with people in different cities or even across seas. Um, that it's just okay. I'm not just gonna tell you of or even Sonubus. I'm not just gonna tell you a Sonubus, but here's a framework you can follow along. The tools are already there, and bam, you're ready to get going. Um, Doing live jams and things with people that are across seas. Um, so I think that's, um, I don't think there needs to at all for certain things. I don't think there, at least on technical ends. when it comes to audio engineering and, like I said, just various technical things. Um, there doesn't need to be a unified uh, front, so to speak, where but there at least some kind of frameworks pointed to of where it's just here you go, get this, and you're ready to follow along um, in the
Yeah.
lesson plans. Um, and just because having frameworks so that people could do those following alongs and whatnot, that seemed to me to be something that was deeply in lacking. um there was just things all over the place, and very very um very little being done so that there was a common uh framework of which the okay we're gonna we're going to teach these lessons. And like I said, it could be everything from machine intelligence to audio engineering, um, to how people can build their own personal effects, um, but doing that in a way that they're not being you know sent in a billion different
Right.
directions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think, a lot of the things that we're probably going to do, you could find, um, but, like a lot of the materials out there, a lot of technical materials are going to be for, software developers or data scientists or those sorts of things. So just, what I want to do is provide, for whatever the topic is, something that people in the CC music community can go to our stuff and say, well, at least someone in the community thought this was relevant to us. So not just doing like some wide big search out on the internet to try to find stuff. Like, this is a place where I go and I find stuff that maybe it's relevant to musicians, and I'm not a musician, but at least it's relevant to the CC music community. So in some way, shape, or fashion. Um, so one thing that I want to talk about before we head out, and I can stay a little bit longer if I need to, but I also want to respect people's time. Is branding, and we've been saying educational materials, and maybe that's what we want to stick with. I did have the thought of maybe thinking about it more as like a Skillshare. I don't know if the word education like turns people off or not. Um, I mean, my wife is an educator, my brother is an educator, my grandfather was an educator, both of my parents are my educators, both of my aunts are educators, my great grandmother was an educator. I'm slightly biased in this regard, I think. So, um, to me, I sort of think of like people, and this is probably a reference that a lot of people don't have either, is like when I was in Chapel Hill, I would go, they had a really, really free market in Carborough that I would go to sometimes. Um, are you familiar with really, really free markets, Al?
With what's that?
So there's a thing called a really, really free market. It's an
No,
anarchist.
I've
Yeah.
not.
So it's like it's basically like bring what you have, take what you need. It's like an anarchist thing. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I've seen a lot of hacker spaces that kind of do
yeah,
that and do
yeah.
exact.
This is the really, really free markets are more like, people are bringing like plates and offering to cut people's hair and like
Okay, okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
so yeah, sometimes people would offer services, maybe they would fix bikes. Again, a lot of this stuff was just like, hey, I have this stuff I don't want, everybody meet at this time, and if you want it, one's man's garbage is another man's treasure, sort of thing. um again, people would teach things. They would do like, like, come and get your bike fixed, but also come and learn how to fix your bike, so
Right.
um so just thinking about like everybody in our community has certain skills, um, and they can share those skills with the rest of the community. That's sort of my thought, and I think it's probably good to have a mix of these sort of like we've got 8 parts. There's a vision. We're gonna start at point one, and we're gonna take you to point eight. I think there's a place for that, but there's also like a place for like the one-off where like a guy is just like, oh yeah, I just learned how to like make this new effect. I can like record a video to show other people how to make these sorts of effects. Like we can have that stuff too. So it can just be but again, it's like if you try to just put that stuff on YouTube and then try to go find it, um, who knows where you're going to end up? You're going to end up wherever Google wants you to end up is the answer.
Yeah.
So um, that's sort of my thought. I don't know if people sort of put those things together because to me they're the same, but I don't know if the other people they sort of like you see what am I making sense as far as what I'm asking?
Um, I mean, I do feel that it's having, as we've discussed before, kind of a centralized, if not repository, but some kind of hub.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and we
That's
and we've got that, and I mean we could probably brand it better. I mean, Dave's been a great host, but Dalek.zone doesn't scream CC music to folks, I'm sure. But that's a separate discussion. But the thing that I would like to get some feedback on is like whether or not it would be useful to sort of like brand things as Skillshare. Like, do we think that would get more people involved than the word education? Like do people hear education and think like, university degrees? I just don't know.
oh yeah, yeah. Sometimes I kind of kind of towards the end of like what Mark had been saying, if the old KISS method,
Yeah,
um, keep it simple, stupid. Um, don't. I think there's something that something that gets lost when there's an attempt to overcomplicate.
fair enough. Um, yeah, so I think early December. Originally, I had planned on recording the first session yesterday, and then maybe we could talk about how that went. But I decided for a variety of reasons to move that to December. So I believe Evan and I are going to record on uh, December 6th, the AI and ML history. That's the plan. And then I was thinking about doing the stats stuff first, but or second after that. But I'm thinking maybe actually it would make more sense if I had Josh on.
Hmm.
Um, and maybe even like having on Josh for the first one. So like we have a good reference for like why the hell it is that we're even talking about this in the first place. Um, because I think there's going to be a lot of people that like tune out just because of the subject matter. Um, so maybe we start with Josh, and then we do the history after that. And then I was thinking, actually, for most of the stuff that we're going to talk about, and for most of the stuff that like musicians would care about, the stats piece probably doesn't mean a whole lot. I mean, I think it's useful for understanding that it's like not magic, but um, at the same time, uh, I don't know. And part of the thing is that Evan can't record that the day that I wanted to record it. And I do think that like the way that I had it blocked off in January for like the actual machine learning pieces, I do kind of like that blocking, is because then we can record before Christmas. People can watch that stuff, over the last couple of weeks of December, and then we can get some feedback potentially before we start going into the sort of like more direct email stuff in January.
Right, right, right.
But yeah, I need to, I mean, I guess, would you have any thoughts on the architecture of that?
Um, no, I mean, I do. Um, I mean, I think starting off with kind of a history and what is
Yeah,
uh, machine learning and machine
right.
intelligence, because that's the core foundation that so many people, nine, I would literally put it at over 90% of people have no clue. Their whole conception of what machine intelligence is completely off base.
Yeah, yeah. No, yeah, I mean, not really like, I guess, the topic of today, but oh, there's a great, I'll pop it in the chat. Um, I've got it in some notes somewhere. Let me see, maybe it's there. Oh yeah, timeline of artificial intelligence. Wikipedia to the rescue again. I just love this, that like, like people were making like mechanical dudes in like, the 10th century BCE.
Oh,
Like
yeah, yeah,
like,
yeah.
like like 12,000 years ago, people were already doing this stuff. And like maybe that's like kind of apocryphal, like maybe we don't really have records that are that far back. You're kind of getting into like Chinese mythology at that point, but like, you know, like even if it's not that far back, I mean like, you know, you're talking about like thousands, of years ago
No,
for some of
no.
this stuff. Like it's
Yeah, it can go way, 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 way,
yeah.
way, way back. I mean, we could start taking it to Jewish mysticism, magic,
Right.
and
Yeah.
gods and whatnot.
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, people just
But
think that like
I think it's
AI
more
burst in like
yeah, I think it's
2023.
more
So,
practical to just stick to what it is
yeah. Well, I picked
in
out,
regards to the computing tools that people have today.
well, yeah, actually, so I picked, there's a couple on here that are music that I picked out for that history. So, like in the ninth century, CE, they were already like, programming music into things. Like, so it's like that was, 1100 years ago, 1200 years ago. People were already doing this stuff.
Yeah, yeah.
So, eh, yeah. So yeah, I do think having some sort of like frame of reference for even thinking about this stuff early on is gonna be important. But I also think Josh's perspective, maybe having like before rather than after. Like I was kind of thinking about having all this like big picture stuff at the end, but I think actually we might need the big picture stuff at the beginning.
I think it might be good to start off. No, just here's what you know. What we got CPUs
Yeah, 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 yeah. So I mean,
and even if we're dealing with the cubing of the bit, that is it's like that's not really not all that different in some senses from our modern day. And so I think it's good to start out from there. Now maybe at the end, I think that's where you can blow it up
well,
from.
no, I'm talking about two separate sessions. So Josh's session is going to be separate. I was just thinking the statistical stuff, put that at the end. Um, but that's separate from the history stuff.
Yeah, I would think that even before statistical stuff or anything like that, start off on the history. Now then after that, then yeah, because at the end of the day, what the models are doing really can be boiled down to statistical set theory probability.
Yeah. And you're on those emails, Al, where I've got it blocked out into three separate blocks. So basically, I'm talking about moving basically changing like 2 and 8, maybe seven becomes eight and two becomes seven.
Okay.
But yeah.
Yeah, I haven't looked at those yet, but I'll be sure to do that.
So, uh, but yeah, I mean, I guess the real question is like the stats piece. Do we think people need to have that before? And I think if you're talking about from a computer science standpoint, the answer is definitely yes. I'm not sure that's the case for musicians.
Yeah, and that's the thing is that I think for general artists that's you I think it's almost like getting more technical, deep, having that deep somewhere that's deeper down the hole,
Yeah.
so to
Okay.
speak.
Yeah. Yeah. And we would have to reference if we wanted to talk about like linear regression or something, then we would have to reference the earlier version anyway in later ones. And then if we need to do that again, then we can just say we'll be covering that in a session later.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
I don't think it changes things too much. I mean, maybe you have to think a little bit more about you know not expecting people to know stuff, but we don't know how many people are gonna just jump into one and not do the whole thing anyway. So, we're juggling that, and we're juggling like the marketing versus the education sort of thing. So there's a lot of variables. But anyway, I think we've got pretty good framework for moving forward here. Um, was there anything else that you wanted to uh, discuss on the recorded session before I stop it?
I know we can't hear Heather, and I'm not sure. I know she's still here. I'm not sure if she can access the chat. But maybe give give her. Oh, there's Miss Heather.
Yeah, we got some beats there.
Um, yeah, if she has anything that she would like to say or ask, I have to step away to use the bathroom real quick. I'll be right back.
Okay. All right. Well, what I will do is go ahead and stop the stream, and then I'll hang out until Al gets back, and then we can see if there's anything we want to talk about not on the recording.